When I got to Saturn, I didn't know what to expect. But Dave Pierce actually took the time to answer all my questions. Not only did I buy a Saturn, I thought it might be fun to sell them. You know what I like best about working here? Showing guys the vanity mirror.
It's not a unique car, and I don't think anyone's ever claimed it was. One would be hard-pressed to argue strongly that it was dramatically different than its competition. And I don't think anyone has. No, we haven't even faced that question. So it's much more an attitude than anything else, and it's a kind of behavior. It's a kind of behavior that consumers obviously have been wanting for a long time.
You can't create in advertising what's not there in the heart of the company. Or you can, but you'll flop. Because people will find out. You've got to be able to back it up. And what we did is amplify it, but you know, you can't do for everybody what's been done for Saturn unless it's there. And no way. And you'd be a bad person if you tried.
I think you can't lose sight that we sell cars, or else we're all going to get into a weird zone. I think we would classify it as a brand. We'd call it a brand, but a consumer doesn't think of it that way. I think what we've done is they look at it as a company they can trust.
The thing that was interesting is that if you're going to try to sell to import owners who wanted to be able to believe in something American but couldn't, there's a big parallel between what people wanted to build and what people wanted to buy. And that's where it came from. You might as well tell them how much it means to these people, because if the consumers can trust what these people have given up and sacrificed and trust what they want to do, then you have a match.
You know, it seemed to me the way I was building cars, the way to do your job came from up above. I wasn't encouraged to think beyond my part. When the chance came to move to Spring Hill and work at Saturn, part of a new crew, I hoped what I'd heard was true. You know, if you build a system where every step of the way the people who build the cars are responsible and they can make a judgment, well, if everyone has done their job, there shouldn't be anything less than a well-made car coming off the back end of the building, in my opinion. Maybe that's why October 12th is a day I'll never forget. That's the day I pulled the rope and stopped the Saturn line. Half a mile came to a stop. It was just a broken retainer clip. In the old world, if you stopped the line, you better be sure it was a life or death situation. I'm sure it only took a minute to fix, but even a minute can seem like an hour. You know, given the chance, anyone prefers to make a perfect product. At Saturn, by giving us that rope, they've given us that chance.
That's what we stand for. We stand for people committed to bringing you the best service, the best product, the best experience in the car category. And I think we're in need of brands or companies out there that we can trust and believe in, and that are committed to delivering excellence. And that is what Saturn has going in its favor. We're not overconfident with that. We understand that that's a pretty fleeting thing.
Well, certainly a lot of the newness is worn off, but apparently the appeal of being treated well and fairly, and being surprised by a kind of courtesy and treatment that one would not normally expect, not only from the car industry, but from anyone else for that matter. I don't think that ever is going to wear off.
I think Saturn has probably touched a lot of hot buttons in a society where values have not always counted. To be able to find a company that places values at the top of the priority list, treats people right, with respect, is humble, can poke fun at itself. I think all of that contributes to the aura of what Saturn is all about. I think we've tapped a need that people feel good about. They like the company Saturn.
I love my car.
Oh, you'll love it. You'll love it.
I was extremely pleased and very satisfied.
I like the fact that I love my car.
I love that sunroof.
A really super car.
Oh my gosh, it's my car.
Oh yeah, this is a nice car.
What do I think of it?
Oh, I love my car. I love my car. It's great.
Do you like your Saturn?
We love our Saturns.
Oh yes, let me tell you about our Saturn. I get it, and I'm still like chuckling to myself, like, nice car. Bye-bye.
Saturn appeals to people at an emotional level. It has symbolic dimensions to it that transcend automobile dealerships or manufacturers of any products. It seems to have captured something core about people, about what a company could stand for, what America could mean, what it could mean to be related to people again in the purchase environment. It is a car and much more than a car. The car is the generic dimension of the product, but the product is more than the car itself.
Where the customer meets a Saturn product is really at the retail level. They don't meet it in Spring Hill. They meet it here in each city and each individual facility.
We have a lot to do with the image of Saturn. I mean, we're the ones that are out there representing that, and we in our stores are constantly talking about, you know, it's up to us for the image of Saturn. And if we want to be respected as a sales consultant, we have to act like a Saturn sales consultant.
It's just not buying a car. I mean, this is the Saturn experience, the Saturn way. It is the way. This is the way it should be done.
My mother bought a car not too long ago from a different dealership, and she ended up going back and just blessing the salesman out because he hadn't shown her anything about her car. Once he made the sale, he just pushed her out the door and wouldn't have anything else to do with her. So she walked in and said, "My daughter bought a Saturn, and this is how she was treated," and proceeded to tick off a list on her fingers of all the things John had done for me when I bought a $15,000 car versus how she had been treated for a $27,000 car. And the salesman was very contrite after she got through with him, and I think that more and more salespeople are going to be getting this, and they're going to have no choice but to try and keep up with Saturn.
You know, I like the look of it, I like the feel of it, but basically I just like being treated like this.
I think it's definitely a precedent-setting experience.
There was a local radio station that called us that we've done a lot of advertising with, and they wanted us to be involved in this exchange your baby car seat for a new one, free. It had to do with California, I believe California Highway Patrol, I believe it was the, I think the revenue for this comes from the tickets that they issue. I'm not sure. But at any rate, through our involvement and the radio station involvement, they showed up here. It was well publicized, and we literally had hundreds, maybe even thousands of ladies in here with their children, turning in their old car seats, baby car seats, for new ones. And at the end of the day, we had two big giant piles of old car seats outside there, and it was quite an event. I was asked about that by a dealer friend of mine, and he thought, why in the world would you ever do something like that? Why would you have all those people in your showroom that have no interest in buying your car and wasting your salesman's time and just cluttering up the whole place? And I just looked at him and said, I don't know, I just thought it was a nice thing to do.
Most of the people that have a curiosity about Saturn first come and say, well, why did you do it? Why? Then, if you're not careful, that's a half-hour lecture on what the automobile industry went through with gasoline, emission controls, fuel economy, and safety all at one time. But then they want to know, the next thing is, well, why doesn't everybody do that? And that's a little more difficult to explain.
You see, the whole spotlight of what Saturn's about has changed. early on it was about us not being able to do these things. Now we're doing it, and it's now their spotlight. Why can't you do those things? And that's a great position to be in.
Our competition is spending tens of millions of dollars studying and analyzing what we have done to get the grades that we have gotten from the customer, and they're not doing it to duplicate it. They're doing it to get better at what we're doing. And if we allow them to get better, what do we have to be competitive anymore? If our car's just as good, if our customer relationship or customer enthusiasm's just as good or not as good, what do we have anymore?
I think Saturn is going through a real testing time right now, and my fervent hope is that we pass the test as a stronger, cohesive company with a real sense of conviction about why we are who we are and where we're going. I think one of the difficulties, I think, is that some of us early on had a lot of time to really chew on a lot of the concepts and a lot of the ideas, so we could internalize it. We had the time to do that. And then when we were in a hiring frenzy with 300 people every month, building the organization up, there wasn't as much time for people to really think through some of the concepts and how it would affect our work on a daily basis. And so now that is all being tested.
My personal feelings are that Saturn needs to pay particular attention to the human angle. That's where we could stumble. I operate on what I call the 5 to 10% SOB factor. That any company, a union, a family, a church, a community, that 5 to 10% of those folks will just be SOBs. You know, I don't know if they were born SOBs, made SOBs, but that it's a pretty good rule of thumb. 5 to 10% of any group will be SOBs. And I think one of the things Saturn needs to pay particular care with is not to let its 5 to 10% SOB factor set the tone at Saturn.
As soon as you start patting yourself on the back without simultaneously kicking yourself in the butt, you're going to have a problem. And so to the extent that Saturn could do both simultaneously, then I would predict kind of a reasonably rosy future. The other thing that could kill Saturn, to me, is our United States culture. And in the United States culture, what we do is we throw a lot of money at something, and then in about 2 or 3 years, we pull it up by the roots to see how well it's growing. And then we say, well, this one didn't work either. Throw it away, and then we start that cycle again. And so it's that short-term focus that I think could kill Saturn.
It's hard to keep the intensity up, and I think that's a real risk. You know, how do you keep these the intensity up in the showroom? How do you keep it up in the advertising and in the product design in the manufacturing plant? How do you keep this passion, this intensity, this strong culture going?
I was in Phoenix one day. Tim Epps and I were coming back from Thunderbird University, and we stopped off at a restaurant near the airport, which was a Mexican restaurant. As we walked in, everyone was speaking Spanish. We weren't too sure whether we'd be able to order, but it was cafeteria-like, and so we kind of got our way in there. And as we walked up to the cafeteria, got our trays out, the fellow behind the counter says, "You guys from Saturn?" Because we had our little Saturn logos on. I said, "Yeah." He says, "Is that true about that guy flying that seat to Alaska?" And boy, I tell you, when you can say, "You better believe it's true," we can even tell you what his name is and when he did it. He says, "You guys really did that, huh?" Yeah. You know, it's back to this, it's what we are.
Who knew what to expect? I'd never been to Alaska before. Had no idea it was so far away. Coming from Tennessee, it's up there. And Petersburg, it's even farther. But I wasn't going to have a good time. I was going to check on a car, fix a little problem we had with our seat recliner. Something you normally just bring into the retailer. But Robin Millage, she'd ordered her Saturn sight unseen, had it shipped 2,500 miles. Robin couldn't very well bring her car to us, so we went to her. Didn't take long to make things right. A few minutes, and I was on my way home. I tell folks Alaska's a great place. People go out of their way to make you feel comfortable. But I'd recommend staying for more than a day.
when we first started with Saturn, we asked people if there was a new car manufacturer that came into the marketplace, and it was either a joint venture between an American car manufacturer and a Japanese car manufacturer. Who would you buy a car from? And we said, would you buy a car from General Motors? That was General Motors alone. Would you buy a car from a General Motors blank, somebody, other joint venture? Or would you buy a car from Sony? And people automatically said Sony. You know, I trust Sony. I think Sony is a brand that will, you know, give me great features, great quality, great value. We were flabbergasted by that being, we really delved into it. You mean to tell me you would go buy a car from a company that's never built a car in their life versus, you know, a brand like GM? Yes. Well, we just flipped around and we're pursuing the Sprint Spectrum business. So now we're talking about buying a cellular phone from somebody. We said, would you trust Sprint to bring you this new technology, or would you trust Saturn to do it? People automatically are saying Saturn.
The value set that we talked about enables us to walk through the door to a different world. And once you've done some of these things and you now see the world from the other side, you don't ever want to go back.
I think that without the values, without the commitment to those values, we wouldn't be where we are today. We absolutely would not. And as a retailer, one concern that I have, and I voiced this concern to some of the Saturn executives, that if there are retailers out there that aren't performing in a Saturn-like way, and that haven't totally bought into the Saturn concept, then they're compromising all of us.
We have to not be afraid to step up to people that are not performing according to the plan, people that are not performing in a consistent way. Because I look at it, one of Saturn's primary functions and purposes is to protect the brand equity that we've spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort developing. And what that brand equity does, if we protect that, we're going to protect the value of the Saturn franchise. And for the Saturn retailers, that's a very important issue. That's also important to the Saturn owner, because if the value of that franchise is protected, the value of the brand is protected, then the owner will be treated right.
I used to hear the old guys talk about history and the cars they made. Didn't mean much to me then. I had missed those years. But now I think about how they felt when it was happening. We were called an experiment. You see, what someone figured out is that there's something more important than machinery and equipment if you want to get a good product out the door. It's about people. Their struggle to do something they've always wanted to do, but never had the chance. No time clock, no foreman, just you telling yourself what to do. And if you have 8,000 people